Wolfe Stunts Productions is proud to present the world's first and only How We Did It, How It's Done learning, wheelie, instruction home video. Their stunt writer, service department owner, Richard Peterson. Freestyle motorcyclist, Carrie Day. Producer, Daredevil, Sean Wolfe, and trick rider, triumph expert, Wade Thies will show you step by step the basics, preparations, and advanced techniques of wheeling a motorcycle on a three-wheeler. This movie is information and entertainment only. Any attempts to recreate riding techniques shown should be considered very dangerous and should never be performed by an amateur. All shot motorcycle preparations, including a preview of our upcoming feature, will be found at the end of this movie. We're going to have a good time demonstrating the mysterious space between looping over backwards and dropping your front wheel back to earth. This movie is a true experience that's found.
To begin with, I recommend a three-wheeler to learn the basics. The throttle coordination with the rear brake to maintain the balance point. A three-wheeler is a lot easier and a lot safer to learn on than your basic motorcycle. One thing, it's got a rack in the back that will keep you from looping. The balance point's lower. They've got motors with centrifugal clutches, many of them do, that will allow you to make mistakes with the rear brake and not kill the motor. Let's see what we can do with a three-wheeler here. The basic thing that you want to learn on a three-wheeler is the relationship of the throttle to the rear brake. When you want to get the front end a little higher, give it some gas. When you want to come down or save yourself, the rear brake will do that for you. Watch. Those are the two basic ways to learn to wheelie. That's sitting down and standing up. I like standing up myself. You have a lot more control. Mainly it's easier to get off the back if you loop it. Just simply step off, the front end comes down and you're safe. Let me show you. The three-wheeler won't even hurt itself. Sitting down's a little scarier, but again, if you have a bar of the proper length, which nearly all ATVs come stock with, it'll stop you before you get into serious trouble. Let me show you.
Watch now as Wade Thies and Carrie Day demonstrate our shared philosophy that most every aspect of wheeling and balance can and should be learned on a three-wheeler first before you ever climb on a two-wheeled motorcycle. Advanced techniques such as standing and turning, even though it's a job to muscle, is safest tried out on a three-wheeler. The lack in overall control is worth the lessons learned in balance. When we test new maneuvers for motorcycles, we always try them out on a three-wheeler first.
Naturally, the first step to any wheelie is pulling up the front wheel. Find a wide open area, free of any obstructions, preferably an uphill. The advantages to learning to wheelie on an uphill are that it'll provide a constant load on the motor, keeps things smooth. Another important factor is selecting the proper gear. Find a gear that's fast enough to give you some stability when you pull it up, but not so fast that you have to really tug on the bars, because that can really throw you off balance too. I'll show you a few starts here in the different gears. I'll start out fourth gear, third gear, second gear, and then show you first gear. On this bike, I think you'll see that probably pulling it up in second gear is the easiest. It's going to vary with your bike. Let's do a few.
There's a lot of muscle and power first, braking later, and high gears. Third gear is mostly power up front, braking later. Second gear is even power and even braking time.
First gear is necessary in any tight area, or particularly if you're wheeling around a stadium motocross track. Basically any time in the dirt, you're pretty much going to have to use first, or start out in second and shift down to first. I didn't use my gyro on any of those, because you're really, at this point, a gyro's not going to do you any good. Until you can wheelie until your front wheel stops, a gyro really isn't going to help you. Let me show you a real sloppy pull-up here that probably a few of your first ones are going to look like. What you're going to want to try to do is keep your throttle as steady as possible. If your first ones look like this, don't worry. Mine did. You'll notice that on that beginning pull-up, I was hit on and off the gas, not sure what to do with the brake, basically fishing for the balance point. If you have the confidence, and hopefully you've learned this on a three-wheeler, which I recommended earlier in the movie, try to pull up, gas, lean back, gradually apply the brake, get all the way back to the balance point all in one fluid movement, and then start dialing in the throttle for exactly what you want. Let's move on to the next section.
To gain speed, ease off the throttle and let the front wheel down beyond the balance point, and then add more throttle until you've achieved the speed you want. Bring the wheel back up to the balance point with your throttle, keeping constant pressure on the rear brake. Reducing speed is a little trickier. You have to bring the front wheel back beyond the balance point, brake without stalling the engine by giving your throttle feather-light touches. Reducing speed takes a lot of practice, and this is one move all of us developed on the three-wheeler.
Now let me show you how to upshift and downshift. Upshifting is something that most people do on learning to wheelie because they're speed wheeling. They're constantly gaining speed, never really using the balance point. Downshifting is a very advanced technique, and I recommend that you learn to wheelie in a straight line and do circles in one specific gear before you move on to downshifting.
As you can see, upshifting is the same as gaining speed, but now you're shifting up and easing off the throttle while the higher gear takes effect. Now let's have a look at downshifting. And remember, utilize that three-wheeler for learning. Downshifting is plain hazardous. To downshift, bring the front wheel up past the balance point, keeping your foot on the brake, stab the foot lever to a lower gear, or depending on your bike, pull in the clutch and downshift. It's going to take a lot of practice and a lot of patience to get this one smooth.
First step in learning to stand up is to have a few friends hold the front of your forks up, maybe set the front wheel on a table, and just stand up and practice it. Fish around for the footrest with your left foot. Sometimes it's tricky to find. Depending on how you shape the footrest, it might not feel like you're on it all the time, sometimes when you are. The weight transfer when going from sitting to standing has got to be compensated for. Your weight is going to be shifted entirely to the right foot peg, so you've got to have your body over to the left of the bike. Also, your weight's moving back, so it helps to drop the front end a little. Then as you're shifting back, you get your foot settled, then you can dial, use the brake and the gas to dial in your exact balance.
Don't be too proud to use shortcuts to custom yourself to a new move. Don't try to do it all at once. Rick and I both know there was always time later to polish and impress. Sitting back down while wheeling is easier than you might think. Just ease off the throttle at the same time you sit down, then give the throttle just enough to regain the balance point and continue.
For this section, I'm going to start out in first gear. I'm going to stay in first gear the entire time. And I'm going to show you seated left turns, seated right turns, standing left turns, and standing right turns. We'll start with seated left turn.
We started with this sensible technique. Use your foot for control while steering into the turn and tugging to the right, allowing the gyro force to help you through the turn. Look to the shop section at the end of the instruction to understand the gyro effect and how to use a gyro motor. Now take a look at a seated right turn. Right turns are harder. Aside from the psychological fact that right-handed people don't want to turn right because they're trying to protect their good side, you can't put your foot down to save yourself. You're using the brake. Turn the wheel into the turn and tug towards the left for stability. Here's a standing left turn. The standing left turn is done basically the same as the seated left turn. Turn the wheel towards the turn, tugging at the right for stability. You'll find that you'll have more overall control on your motorcycle than any standing wheelie. Now let's take a look at a standing right turn. On the standing right turn, you find if you just point the wheel to the right, the gyro force will pull you around and keep you in a right turn. And coming up, a break with Wade Thiessen as he shows us a polished circle.
Let me show you how to get out of the 4 types of turns once you've gotten into them.
Lean into the turn as you steer the wheel out of the turn. Let the gyro pull you out. Stabilize by moving your body over the center of balance, gas it, and go straight. On right turns, you're going to have to rely more on the force of the gyro to get you out because it's more difficult to get your body to the right. You're working with a throttle and a brake on that side. Move your handlebars to the left and right and accelerate to get straightened up. Straightening out of a standing left turn is the same as a sitting left turn, but you're going to have to lessen the exaggeration on the moves. When you're standing, there's a lot more leverage and a lot more control. The standing right turn is maybe the trickiest move you'll come across. The same theory as the sitting right turn, with the addition that it takes twice as long to learn. Don't push it, take it slow, and it'll come.
Wheeling off-road terrain takes a combination of all the skills that we've shown you up to this point. Going over whoop-de-doos really doesn't take much more skill than it does to maintain the basic balance point on level ground, but there are a few things to remember. As you're coming up the whoop-de-doo, you're going to want to lower the front end a little bit and be on the gas. Just as you reach the top, you're going to want to have it just back past the balance point a little bit, allowing you to brake as you come down. Here's where a heavy flywheel really comes into effect. On a light 2-stroke, if you brake too hard coming down a whoop-de-doo, you kill the motor. After you've got the basics of wheeling down, you've tried a few moguls off-road, you've gone through some sand, you're ready for freestyle. This is what's really fun. Let me show you a little.
Do not try any of these tricks in our show-off section. This is only a show-off.
There are going to be times when you don't have a lot of room and you're going to want to get up as fast as you can in a wheelie. Starting from a dead stop is an advanced technique. I recommend that you don't even try this until you already know how to wheelie real well in a straight line. And I'd also definitely recommend that you have a gyro on your bike. It's real unstable doing this without a gyro. Let me show you. We call this one the Lone Ranger. Watch. Scrapers are neat because they look scary. They are scary, and you got to have absolute confidence in your ability with the balance point before you even try it. A couple of clues are: make sure you have enough speed to get the front wheel back down after you've passed the balance point. You got to have that momentum. Also, if you pull in the clutch when you're back past the balance point, you can feel it better. You can feel where the bike's at. Have your foot on the rear brake the whole time, metering in more rear brake as you go back. The higher you sit on the bike, the higher the balance point is, and the more momentum you're going to have as you come back down. I recommend tucking in if you're going to sit down. Don't try these until you really know what you're doing, and make sure you have on chest protector, helmet, your gloves, good boots, knee pads. Be dressed like Sir Lancelot if you're going to try these guys. Also, practice with a friend so he can tell you how far back your fender is. And if you learn to do it on a downhill, it's easier because your fender is closer to the earth when you're at the balance point. Again, this is one of the more dangerous stunts, if you will, that we're showing you on this video, and use extreme caution if you ever try this yourself. Terrain means you got to have momentum. I'm going to take a shot at this puddle. I think second gear should be about the right speed. I'm going to stand up so I got more control, and if I bail, I can get away from the bike. I'm giving myself about a 30% chance of making it. What do you guys think? Let's try it. Let's try that again. One thing to keep in mind is that if you're ever going over slippery terrain, you got to keep the front end down. If you're too far back, the rear brake really won't have enough of an effect. Actually, what we're doing is this is an audition for a Tide commercial, and with new and improved Tide, I'll look as good as new here within minutes.
You'll be clean, too.
Sean, this thing's on my foot. The thing that's real important is always keep your equipment in tip-top shape. Treat it right, it'll treat you right. See ya.
Ooh, that was pretty. Another shot again. He ate it! Oh my God! Run for your lives! Oh my God! Oh, Rick! And that's not the way to do it.
Let me do that again.
Yeah, please.
Scrapers are neat because they look scary. They are scary. Under control or some shit like that.
More time.
If I got that sloppy on my YZ250 motocross racer, I'd never make it through the day. It's gonna be hard on this thing.
Missed me by that much.
What's your excuse, Wolf?
This is
Well,
not step by
let's
step.
I don't know what I'm gonna say yet.
I mean, to sit and watch a coyote die, to me, that's fun.
When you saw Sean. Iowa Silver! Whoa! Pretty bad, huh?
Yeah.
Iowa Silver! Whoa! Pretty bad, huh?
Yeah.
Iowa Silver! Whoa! Let's do something else with this going.
Yeah?
Okay, in there's going to be an ad for how you can get the video, and it'll teach you how to wheelie, just like we're doing.
Yeah, you're really good. You're really good.
Guys, if at first you don't succeed, make up some other excuse. Why was the tires or something? my suspension. My carburetion's off, but I'll give it another shot. Yeah, I thought I'd better shut it down that time because my motor sounded kind of funny. I thought it was going to blow up. It's that cheap Arco gas, man. I knew I should have went to Shell. Hey, who put that hump there, man? Nobody told me about that. If I had my other bike, it'd be a piece of cake. The speedometer light got in my eye. I think the psychological fact thing gives us some credibility.
I like that.
Okay. This is the how to build a wheelie bike section of our video. You're going to hear me mention the names of several suppliers of aftermarket parts that I've used over the years to build wheelie bikes with. If you don't catch the full names, addresses, don't worry. At the end of the video, in the credits, we're going to list those for you. Also, if you have any technical questions regarding how to build a wheelie bike, or even on wheeling techniques and how to wheelie, feel free to write to us at this address. That's Wheelie Info, 527 North Azusa Avenue, number 275, Covina, California, 91722. We'll answer any questions you may have to the best of our ability. There's no cost to you. When selecting a wheelie bike, you've got two basic options. As everyone knows, large 4-strokes are easier to learn on than small 2-strokes because the 4-stroke has lots of mellow power and also a lot of compression braking. You don't need the rear brake as much. Once you're good though, a lightweight 2-stroke is a lot easier to throw around, and the addition of a heavy flywheel can make it almost as easy to control as a large 4-stroke. This is a how to wheelie video. We're teaching you the basics, and we're going to teach you on a large 4-stroke. Tightening your chain more than you normally would is an excellent way to smooth out your wheelies. If your bike comes equipped with a chain tensioner, that'll help you too. If not, aftermarket chain tensioners such as this one from T&D Designs are available to fit just about any off-road bike, or you can certainly modify one to fit yours. To help take some of the squat out of wheeling as you get on and off the gas and apply the rear brake, I recommend an ATK chain torque eliminator. The ATK chain torque eliminator is available from ATK. They cost about $130. They make a lot of noise. They're hard to put on, but they'll certainly smooth out your wheelies. For off-road riding, gear as low as you possibly can. I'm running an 11:62 ratio that I got from Azusa Engineering here in Covina, California. That's the lowest gearing that I could run without modifying my swing arm. If that's not low enough for you, Sprocket Specialist has sprockets available up to 74 teeth. I use this one on my 83KX250s. If you really want to go slow, talk to Vic Kraus down at Kraus Racing. That's Mr. Know-It-All if you've ever ridden a dirt bike. He has a sprocket on display about this big. He said you give him a month or two, he'll make a sprocket any size you like. The secret to wheeling is the coordination between the throttle and the rear brake. Check your rear brake pads frequently. Also, I like my rear brake lever to go down about 2 inches before it'll lock that rear wheel. Always make sure to lock the rear wheel before you even think about pulling it up. Check routinely to make sure that your rear brake arm isn't going to hit your Kickstarter, whatever might happen to be in the way on your particular model. More importantly, in the back, as your pads wear down, your rear brake cam arm is going to get close to your axle. Make sure it's not going to hit that axle before it locks the rear wheel up, or you're going to loop it. Set your suspension stiff. That'll smooth out your wheelies. Go stiffer on the preload, get a heavier spring if you can, set your compression and rebound damping as stiff as you can. On tires, you want them soft. Go with a thin ply tire. I recommend a Bridgestone M22. They work well for me. They worked great for the guys on the stunt team. With a Bridgestone M22, I recommend running about 12 pounds of air. I'm running a Bridgestone Trailwing, which came stock on this XT550. It works really well with 8 pounds of air. Again, depending on your weight, what you want to do with the bike, and your style, air pressure is going to vary, and it makes a tremendous difference on your wheelies. Before you start wheeling, make sure you remove the tail light from your bike. When you're a beginner, you're probably going to loop it. There goes a $40 tail light. When you're good, you'll find that you're scraping the rear fender, sometimes when you don't even want to, particularly on downhills. Again, why waste the tail light if you don't have to? A footrest to the back of your bike can allow you to do a lot of things that you can't do sitting down. It allows a lot more mobility, you can throw your weight around a lot more, and it also allows you to relax muscles that have gotten stiff while you were standing. To add a footrest to the back of your bike, I recommend Cutting the tail section off of your dad's bike. He probably doesn't ride it anymore anyhow. Then have a couple of your buddies hold the front of your bike up in the air while you fish around with your left foot for the proper positioning on the tail rest. Then take it down to a local welder and have them fabricate your rest. I took mine to Dr. John's Motorcycle Frame Straightening Shop here in Covina, California. One quick tip for increased control is to narrow your handlebars. I like to narrow mine as much as possible, still leaving enough room for all my controls. This allows me to keep my weight further to the outside of a turn without having to reach way to the inside to grab the throttle or to grab the left handlebar. The longer you keep your front wheel spinning, the longer you're in control. To understand the effects of a gyro, hold the 10-speed up on the back wheel by the handlebars, have your friend throw the front wheel as hard as he can, and then move the bike around. You'll feel the force of a gyro there, even though you can't see it. To keep that front wheel spinning as long and free as possible, first of all, I recommend removing the springs from the axle seals. Secondly, you can change the grease on the bearings to a light machine oil. That'll again reduce the friction. Don't forget the basics. Keep your spokes tight, keep your wheel true, and have it spin balanced. An out of balance wheel is a real handful when it's spinning, especially if you have a gyro motor on the front of your bike. My gyro motor is a Jabsco bilge pump motor that you can get at any marine store. I have it connected to the front wheel by a 25A chain that I got from Chain and Sprocket Specialist in El Monte. I'm geared at about a 6-to-1 ratio. Anything from about 8-to-1 down to 4-to-1 works pretty well with this motor, depending on how quick I want to get it up and how soon I want to be under control. I've got it set up now mainly for off-road tricky courses. The front wheel gets going quick, goes about 30 miles an hour. That's all I need. For long distance, world record attempts, etc., I go with about a 4-to-1 ratio, and the wheel spins about 42 miles an hour there. To fabricate a bracket for my gyro, my machinist, Mark Pickett in Oceanside, California, basically took a chunk of aluminum, drilled a hole for the motor, and put 2 set screws on the bottom so that I can position the motor. Drilled another hole perpendicular to it for the fork leg, and here I have 4 screws that allow me to put the proper tension and also move the bracket on the fork leg. One thing to keep in mind if you use this design is that if you over tighten these 4 bolts, your forks are going to stick when they bottom out. This is not safe. Yeah. If you're a real low budget conehead and you just want to get your front wheel spinning any way you can, go to your local hobby store, get a model airplane starter motor. It's a 12-volt higher RPM motor than the Jabsco bilge pump. Mount it to your fork leg with a rubber wheel running on the inside diameter of the rim. You can get that model airplane wheel at your hobby store as well. To mount it, get a piece of steel, take 2 U-bolts, and clamp them to your fork leg. Again, don't over tighten it or your forks are going to stick. Then, perpendicular to that, you run 2 more U-bolts. That clamps the motor to the mount. And you adjust it to the front rim for proper tension. You're styling. Both the systems that I've just described are direct drive systems. This shouldn't be a problem unless you're running on 2 wheels on the freeway at 60 miles an hour. Your wheelie bike shouldn't be there anyway. Another thing you might be curious about is when to turn your gyro motor on. I normally turn mine on when I'm on the balance point, but when you're first learning, and I do this also when I'm in a tight situation, you can turn the gyro motor on as long as you're going to pull it up in the next second or 2. You may even want to install a mercury switch on your bike so that the wheel only spins when the front wheel's up in the air. I prefer to have positive control of when my gyro motor starts, and for a Santa looking switch, I simply rewired my turn signal switch, removing the turn signals. Wheeling your bike at the angles required to maintain the balance point can cause problems with lubrication and carburation. On a 2-stroke, normally the only problem you'll find is that the transmission vent will dump oil onto the ground. To prevent this, run a longer vent hose up to the steering neck on the bike. On a 4-stroke, the problem's a little more serious. On the early XT500 Yamahas, you'll find it's a dry sump motor, as is this XT550, but after you've wheeled it for a certain amount of time, about a half mile normally, the oil pickup can't pick up oil quick enough. It builds up in the transmission area, blows up through the breather, into the engine, follows the spark plug, the front end comes down, smoke billows out the back, you're all confused, you don't know what you did wrong. Here's how you can prevent that. First of all, plug off that vent hose. That might sound strange because you know you have to have a vent, especially on a large 4-stroke. To reroute your vent, what you do is drill and tap your valve cover adjustment caps with American pipe tap. Put a little piece of pipe on with a hose attached to it, run it back into the airbox. If you do this on the intake and exhaust valve cover caps, that'll help. Fortunately, on the XT550, I've had no problem with lubrication whatsoever on 10, 20, 30 mile wheelies. Never had a problem. Before you do any real serious wheeling on any other four-stroke, you might want to check with your local dealer and ask him about oil pump lubrication, or maybe even tear your motor down and look at it yourself. The main problem that you'll find with carburation in wheeling is that you'll have fuel flowing from your overflow hose. To prevent this, you can bend the internal overflow hose forward. This gets it to the front of the bike and out of the fuel, allowing you to take it further back without overflowing. If you find that you can't bend the overflow hose forward, you may be able to add a short piece of hose or pipe, such as I did on my 82 XL500. Again, the purpose is just to get the overflow hose farther out of the gas to the front of the bike. Normally the carburetors on my XT550 would sit level. To eliminate the problems of fuel overflow and improper jetting while wheeling, I flip my stock intake manifolds over, angling the carburetors up. This created an airbox routing problem, which I solved with some emissions control duct hose that I got at my local automotive store in a package like this for about $2. If you find that your stock intake manifolds won't work when tipped up, you can go through your dealer's parts shelves or even go to another brand, and you can almost always find an intake manifold that'll work. If the intake duct hose isn't going to make it with your stock airbox, what you can do is trash the stock airbox and simply install a K&N filter using that area that the airbox used to be in for your new gyro battery. Pipey 2-strokes are more maneuverable than 4-strokes, but they're also a little more difficult to learn to wheelie. It's easy to kill the motor with the rear brake, and also a little too much throttle can get you into a lot of trouble. To add momentum to the motor and also mellow it out, I recommend adding weight to the flywheel. You can do this by taking your bike along with the flywheel and a flywheel puller to a local machinist, have them fill the generator cover area with a chunk of stainless steel weighing about 5 or 6 pounds. Start out heavy, you can always trim weight off later if you find that you're losing too much throttle response. Either have him fabricate a cover, or what you can do is take a stock cover, several of them, cut the faces off and glue what's left to each other, leaving the end one with a face on. To eliminate pad drag on a modern disc brake equipped motorcycle, push the caliper in and then move it so that you can feel play back and forth and the pads aren't rubbing against the disc. This will allow the front wheel to spin much longer than it would otherwise. Remember though that when you want to get the front brake back, you're going to have to pump it once or twice before it has any effect. If you have a strictly off-road motorcycle equipped with a headlight, chances are it's got a 6-volt AC system similar to this. You have a lighting coil with a wire wrapped around it. One end of the wire goes directly to ground. Normally it's bolted right to the coil. The other end of the wire goes up to a switch, from the switch to the headlight and taillight, and then back to ground. To convert this simple 6-volt AC system to a 12-volt DC system, which you'll need to power your gyro endlessly for those long wheelies, the first step is to send your stock lighting coil to Ron Bishop in Escondido, California. He can rewind the coil for increased amperage and make it work well with a 12-volt DC system. The next thing you'll need is a regulator rectifier unit. This Yamaha part number, 3Y6-81960-AO, works very well with this particular setup. On the 6-volt system, as I explained, one end of the wire goes directly to ground. When you get your coil back from Ron Bishop, both wires are going to be of equal length. You don't want either one of those going to ground. You attach extender wires on them, run them up to the 2 white wires that come out of the regulator rectifier. Then the red wire from the regulator rectifier you run to your battery. The black wire you ground right to the frame. There's also a brown wire on this particular regulator rectifier. You can cut that off and insulate it. You don't need it for this application. From your battery, run about a 15 amp fuse just before your switch, which you can again use a mercury switch, modified turn signal switch, any type of switch you prefer. from the switch to the gyro motor, from the gyro motor directly to ground. If you have a motocross bike, you may find that you can adapt an Enduro model's ignition and lighting system to your bike. Look into it.
The old noisy trailer hitch is gone, replaced by SAE-approved trailer dock, a new logical means of towing. Standing by live is inventor Dr. John.
Joe, Trailer Dock's unique three-way action provides you with a smooth and positive connection at all times. Stop by for your free demonstration.
Trailer Dock, now available at Dr. John's in Covina. For more information, call area 818-332-1598.
Cut. That's a tow, a show. What about...
Here's some scenes for our next Wolfe Stunts production. This isn't instruction. This isn't step-by-step. This isn't even entertaining for the weak of heart. See motorcycle freestyle rider Kerry Day. You see ramp aerials on a skateboard. You see him on a bicycle. Now be the first to witness quarter-pipe ramp aerials on a motorcycle. See his ground freestyle landings on a three-wheeler and two-wheeler. Wheelie techniques that turn royalty into shame. Kerry's the king of freestyle. Will grace you with exclusive shots and rare peaks of what he refers to as top-secret riding technology that he himself has drafted. We have footage of sneak style and mini-world first. Witness the first ever publicized pictures of the monocycle, the world's only motorcycle unicycle. You'll also meet Daredevil Sean Wolfe. He broke into biz with motorcycle like I brought him attention, money, travel, and all those American dreams. And in June of 1985, deposited a torn, twisted, lifeless body at 70 miles an hour on the hard tracks of asphalt, 80 feet past his landing ramp. Watch the horrible landing. See and hear in his own words what happens when a daredevil blows it. Still, he taught himself a new craft, then touring 2 continents as a pickup leaper. And his latest jump, 1 year after almost dying, Sean Wolfe is back. He's catching altitude in a mini truck. Sean's the only man alive jumping a pickup truck ramp to ramp, and for good reason too. $22.95. Only $22.95 will fill in these gaps and more. Did Sean make it this time, or did he blow it? This movie's pure crazy insanity, never before sold or seen. Virgin stunt footage. Flying Mike found the world's hottest bike jumper chicks names like Bobby Knievel on his way to the top. Steve's secret footage, and here his plans take the #1 spot as long distance jumping champion of all time. And introducing Doug Hastings, the Black Knight, gladiator of the asphalt and ruler of the street machine. He's letting us a peek at his strange and mysterious lifestyle and his way of life, skiing, sliding, and pushing its limit on a 600-pound partner of cold, bone-crushing danger. Catch a glimpse of the man behind the mystery. We'll have a rare visit with Wade Eason from Indiana and his trials riding abilities that defy gravity, inject you with adrenaline and surpass the biggest trial stars today. You'll again see Rick Peterson and his unbehaved side. His suicidal rooftop wheelie and his unrefined husband on tour and his unfun selling. This Daredevil's home movie and his tragic travelogue. It's Madness. Madness Part 1. It's only $22.95. Available at Wolfe Stunts 527 North Azusa Avenue, Suite number 275, Covina, California 91722. That's where the office high rises tremble.